the way genocide happened and it changed our lives. But there's other forms of violence that happen to people every single day, um, everywhere in the world. Um, so I just want to let people know that they're not alone. If something happens to you, um, you're not alone. There are other people that have gone through um, um, a lot of different types of violences. It is just how do you deal with those disappointments.
Thank you for tuning in to IPU Podcast, a show about business owners, philanthropists, and influencers from the African diaspora. I am your host, Jay Tessie. Hello, IPU listeners. Welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. And if it's your first time tuning in, thank you. We appreciate you. Come back, subscribe. And for those of you that tune in every week, we just want to say thank you. Today I have a very, very special guest. I know I say that with all my guests, and they're all special. But this guest, I've known him for nearly 20 years. He's been a friend. Basically now he's a brother. He recently just wrote a book, Angels on My Path, and he's here to discuss it with us. He has had one hell of a journey through his life, and I cannot wait for you guys to hear about it. Welcome to the show, Leonard Kagabo. How are ya?
Thank you, Judy. I'm doing very well, and thank you for having me on the show. I'm very excited to talking with you.
The pleasure is all mine. I'm just gonna call you Kaka because that's what I know. So
that's great.
Is that okay?
I'm way fine with that.
All right. So before we, get into this, I don't want to get too comfortable because I obviously know you way too well. Tell our listeners about you, and then we'll talk about your book.
Okay, thank you. My name is Jean-Leonard Kairanga Kagabo, and most of my friends and family know me by Kaka, as Judy mentioned. I'm an analytical chemist. That's what I do for a living, and I'm a father of one son. He's 5 months now. Married with my beautiful wife Diane Morisa Kagabo. And I recently wrote a book. It's called, like Judy said, Angels on My Path. I'm very, very humbled and feel blessed to have been able to accomplish such a big project. And I'm excited to talk with you about all about it. Yeah.
I'm excited to hear all about it because I feel like it's been a long way coming. So Angels on My Path, it's about your journey during the genocide against the Tutsis in '94 in Rwanda, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And how old were you at the time?
I was 12 years old.
12 years old. And basically, yes. Why now? Why did you decide to write about your journey now?
Actually, I have been wanting to write this my story first. I wasn't even thinking about a book. I was just thinking about writing my story and just putting everything on paper for a very long time. But it just has been so busy life of mine, and just so like you just get caught up in just everyday life, and you just keep feeling like, oh, I don't have time to write. I don't have time to write. This is just so much information, a lot to say about everything. So, but as in the recent years, I want to say about 3 years ago is when I really thought I needed to not just say, oh, I'll write my story. I need to be serious about it if I'm really going to do it, because as I get older, my memories, goes down. So I didn't want to regret that. Oh, I didn't write it when I had a chance. Then now I started to forget some of the. There's a lot of things you can't forget about the genocide, but it is when you're writing everything in details that you tend to forget some of the things that you want to include in your story. You may not remember exactly how it happened. So I didn't want to, risk, not being able to write my whole entire story as efficiently and as effectively. I wanted, as far as in terms of memory and everything that I experienced. So that's when I decided I really need to start getting serious. But even then, I really wasn't sure how I'm gonna go about it. How I'm gonna um, um, okay, how do I start? How much time am I willing to put this into? Is this gonna be something like I'm gonna have to do every single day and write maybe a paragraph or something? So I hadn't even gotten a chance to start putting. Really telling myself now I'm dedicated. I'm going to start. Okay. Now get on a computer and start typing and writing. So something came along my path that actually encouraged me to start writing the story, and we're gonna get into that later. Or if I guess I can just even say how I really got started, literally how I started writing. So it was about 3 years ago. I was on my way to work. At the time, my then girlfriend, now my wife, lived in Rwanda, so we're still dating, and so every day I talk to her every morning on my way to work. I will call her, and then I'll pretty much talk to her from the time I leave home until I get to work. And this is about 50 to an hour commute.
Oh, wow.
So it's a long, so it was a long commute to work. And it was good that I was actually I didn't even really realize how fast I got to work, because just having a conversation with her every morning.
Mm-hmm.
So that morning, I left work, and actually, right after I turned on my car and everything, I saw my gas was actually really low. It was like on red.
Mm-hmm.
Then I said, oh, I'm gonna stop at one of these gas stations and put in gas. So I started driving, and so there's like 2 or 3 places you can stop to get gas before I get to work. But then about 30 minutes into my drive, I enter like a place where it's in the middle of nowhere,
Mm-hmm.
where you can't find gas anywhere until you actually like get close to work. So anyway, so I got distracted by my wife now, that I didn't realize how far I have driven without putting gas in. So I passed like all those 3 gas stations without putting gas into it. So here we go. Then all of a sudden, the car started starting, like it didn't want to go anymore. Luckily, I was like right in front of a red light, and on that red light there was like a turning street.
Mm-hmm.
So I just turned right quickly, and it just parked on the side. And then I automatically realized what had just happened. It was a gas. I had ran out of gas. And I told my wife, I think I ran out of gas. I forgot to put gas in my car. before that, on my way. Then I was like, yeah, you see what you did? You distracted me. So then I was like, oh, I have to call you back. I gotta figure out, well, what I'm gonna do about it.
Typical man
How,
always blaming the woman. But go ahead.
right? No, it was all for fun though. Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
So immediately as I had parked, a man pulled up
Mm-hmm.
by my side and he said, "Oh, are you okay?" And then I told him, "Yeah, I'm okay, but I think I ran out of gas." And he's like, "Okay, well, if you think that's what happened, then I'm gonna help you, take you to the gas station, and we fill up we buy it a gas can, then we'll put gas and we'll bring you back. I'll bring you back." So the gas station was another 10 minutes behind me.
Okay, and this is a
Yeah,
total
behind
stranger. You
total
never met.
stranger,
Okay.
and I never met before. And yeah, and then this was like the middle of nowhere. So like, um, to have somebody, everybody will normally go to that main road
Mm-hmm.
before I turned. But once I turned, almost it's like, it's very small back road where like you hardly wouldn't even see people driving on that road.
Mm-hmm.
So then he put me in his car and then we started driving to the gas station. Then he asked me, "Oh, I noticed your accent. Where are you from?" And I told him I was from Rwanda, and he's like, "Oh, yeah, I know about Rwanda." And then he's like, "Yeah, I know the history of Rwanda and the genocide, and so we kind of started talking.
Right.
Then so then we went and got gas and came back and put it in my car, and but like on our way back, and then I mentioned that how I really want to start writing my story, but I just have been so busy with my life, and then I was also honest to say that there's also some laziness about really you know getting it done, because if I think it's that important, then then I just have to get it done. But I always felt like there was some laziness into it too. Like there shouldn't be any reason why I couldn't start writing little by little. So and he's like, if you really wanna write your story, I can help you at least get started. And he said, I'm a writer. I write for the local newspaper. I write a lot of articles, but I also help um, other um, people who want to write articles or books. I help them to write like professional um, um, you know, articles pretty much, and it just really depends on what they want done. But I've, I've been like doing this for a long time, and I work with a lot of other Africans. Uh, so he pretty much say, well, if you really want to be serious about writing your story, just let me know when you want to start, and when we can figure out how to get it done. So and then I was like, oh wow, that is really great, and I'm so thankful that you're willing to help me get this started and everything. So we just pretty much exchange contacts, and then later on I called him and say, he did tell me that he lived not too far from actually where I worked. So it was about 10-minute drive from my work. So then it sounded so like perfect that I can just maybe just leave work and go work with him at his house and start like putting my story down. So we really just had that plan, and we started, and then I started going by his place, and then then he had some ideas of how we can start writing. So I initially he said, you just pretty much can start telling me your story, and then I just get on the computer and start typing. um, But then he said, like, well, I will be interrupting you because I want you to give more details about your story. So don't mind me if I interrupt you asking you questions, because I just want you to give as much detail as you can. So he started writing, and then so that we wrote about for a half hour. Then because I told him, so we just I'm probably gonna have about half hour to commit to this, and I probably won't be able to do it every day. So maybe just try to do like twice a week for a half hour. So that's what I did, and but as he was typing, he started noticing how much information this is, and he said, this is. I mean, we're not even anywhere close to being in the middle. So after like a couple writing, it's like I think to be able to do this efficiently, we may need to put everything in recording everything first. Then we can tag team on getting the audios transcribed on time. That way, you don't have to come here every twice a week. You can once we record, recording will go faster because you're just recording, you're not typing anything, so we can get through your story much faster. Then we can take the time, and then we can do this as you have time, because he has a busy schedule as well, for what he does for living. So he said, both of us can tag team in getting the transcriptions, and once we get all the transcriptions done,
Mm-hmm.
Then I can arrange your story. But actually, he didn't say that until at the end. In midway, he realized, this can be a very good story for a book. So, because for me, I thought we were just writing a story.
So initially you weren't trying to write a book. You were just
no,
releasing.
Just putting something on the record where I can at least make sure that it's written, and so that my kids, if they wanna read my story, they can refer to it. It's available, and I can read it to them. Because I was just worried that eventually I may forget a lot of details.
Gotcha.
So yeah, the goal was just let's put everything on paper.
So this guy was just helping you write your story. Initially, he wasn't even, obviously, I'm assuming he was doing it for free, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. He was just
helping you put your thoughts on paper,
Mm-hmm.
Nothing else. You didn't go in there trying to write a book, and all of that came much later. Oh my gosh. Okay. Wow.
Yeah. That's how generous this man was. And his name is Max Russell, by the way. So I want to refer him as his name, not
this guy. This guy that helped me get gas.
Not French anymore. Yeah. He's not, because he became a friend of mine actually after that.
Yeah.
So yeah. So he mentioned that like midway through my story, he said, this is really an intriguing story that the world will like to read. It's good. You're gonna have it for your family, your kids, and thing. But this is also something that someone like me would like, to pick up a story like this and read. This is like an intriguing story. So that's when he said, well, let's now be mindful that
now you're writing a book and you're changing gears.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's when. Yes. So that's when everything like now, I say, I really didn't even think think about that. But I was like, that's if you say so. You think that's a a story that can be turned into a book. I mean, I'm all for it. But then he said, that he said, this is gonna be a lot of work on my time and obviously on yours too. So it's gonna be like an effort on each of us. So then he said, I normally charge. It's something that I would charge a person to do this. If you want to get it done, and you just give me your story, then I'll write it. And then you just. But then I told him, I don't think I can afford to, to pay to write a book that I'm not even know if I'm gonna get anything in return, because that's, it's in a type of investment that I wasn't really willing.
You weren't ready for. You
to do.
weren't even planning
I wasn't
on
ready
doing
for.
It. Yeah.
Then he say, so then the other option for you is that to write it together, but meaning that you are going to put in just as much time as I am putting in, so it will be 50-50 work. So it takes a lot of time to to write and to do all these transcriptions, and then you're gonna have to also, once it was transcribed everything, so I have to now to organize it into the chapters. Then I will send you the chapters once I organize them and I wrote them. Then you have to go through every single chapter and read it and edit it, and so you're pretty much gonna be doing just as much work as I'm doing, and but we're gonna tag team and make sure do it professionally. But it's going to require the dedication on both of us. Then we will be co-authors, pretty much.
Okay, so it sounds like at this point it was a partnership. How long did it take from that point to now the book is published and it's available for the public? What was the time frame?
So it was 3 good years.
Oh,
3 years
wow.
was the time frame, because that times where we didn't do it weekly, just depending on how his schedule worked with everything else he was doing.
Right.
Now, mindful, he wasn't getting paid for this work, so he was still doing his regular job. So, and same for me too.
Right. So it was volunteering at that point.
It was like kind of yeah. So we but we were serious, and we were on the same page. So whenever I didn't have time, I always was I would communicate with him and tell him ahead of time, hey, I won't be able to do this week, but next week I'm gonna put in double time.
Okay.
For example, that kind of stuff. So I tried to make up the time if I didn't write and if I didn't contribute. And same thing for him too. When he traveled or went on vacation or that kind of stuff. So he would pretty much kind of work on his own. So he got to the point, once we got everything transcribed, it was easier now to actually schedule our own contribution to the book. So we didn't have to meet as often as we did in the beginning when we were just recording.
Right. So 3 years in the making, it's finally here. Now let's go back to the beginning, because I want people to hear this amazing story. It sounds like it took a lot for it to be here. So you're 12 years old, but before the genocide started, can you kind of paint a picture of how Rwanda was, how your childhood was before everything kind of just changed? It seems like overnight, in the 3 months that the genocide took place.
Yeah.
So just walk us through who Kaka was before the genocide, and then we'll get to the genocide itself, and then the Kaka now. So let's I just want people to understand what took place and how you became the man that you are today.
So growing up, it was I grew up in a very big household. I had 11 siblings, so I was the 10th child of my parents.
Wow.
Which yes, which um, I talk about a lot about that in the book.
Mm-hmm.
But so growing up, as far as I can remember, um, I was just a normal um, young boy with older brothers whom I looked up to, and and I pretty much hung out with my brothers a lot. So I had uh, 8 brothers and 4 sisters.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, but I would say that my eldest brothers, I didn't really see them a lot because they had gone to school. They have left the country, some of them, and other ones were in a boarding school. So really, most of my time growing up, I spent it with my uh, three other brothers on a daily basis, I would say. So it was a lot of just really fun times. Playing soccer a lot. So remember that we had a big front yard
Mm-hmm.
that we used to almost every day play soccer and running around, really playing a soccer. And sometimes we would go outside in the neighborhood and just play with other kids. Uh, um, it was. It was in 1990.
Mm-hmm.
So about four years before the genocide, that I noticed uh, what I would hear uh, um, some things like, "Oh, there is a war." So it was when the first time when the RPF army entered Rwanda. Um, and so I used to hear things like, oh, the inkotanyi zateye zinjiye mu gihugu. What that means is like, the RPF army had had entered the country, had invaded the country at the time. So that time, the country was led by a Hutu government. And and Inkotanyi was a Tutsi rebel army that was in Uganda. Um, and I mean, I talk about that in the book too, and how everything uh, uh, really evolved.
Okay.
But in terms of like, starting noticing things changing, is that when I heard, so there's gonna be a war, and these are also the things that I heard from like my classmates and that kind of stuff. But just things that really we didn't talk about at home. My parents didn't say anything about that. I just would hear that outside.
And
And like
obviously, you
one
were
thing,
still pretty young, so even though you heard stuff like that,
yes,
it didn't really resonate because it didn't make sense at the time.
no,
You were pretty young yourself.
yeah. I was pretty young. So at the time in 1990, I was 9 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I remember being so afraid, just hearing something like a war, then and then I asked, I think it was one of my eldest sister. I asked her, you know, um, I hear there's going to be a war. Are we all going to die? I remember asking her that, and then she said, no, you don't have to worry. Everything that's happening is happening so far away. You don't have to worry. It's not going to get here. And it was true that it was actually what was happening right out on the border of Rwanda and Uganda.
Mm-hmm.
So really nothing. And we were in Kigali, which is very far from the border. So they assured me that well, we're gonna be fine. Don't worry about it and everything. So yeah, so then I felt comfortable and I didn't worry much more anymore. Even when I kept hearing some other, you know, um, you know, noise and just people talking about it. I was like, oh, they will never get here. So it was in about 1993 when I started now hearing like just people dying. That this was just more like individual cases where you hear, oh, so and so. These were some of them were like the leaders, some of the leaders in the government. But these leaders were they were actually leaders of like a party within the government, like which was some of these parties were kind of against the government party. So now sometimes you hear like, oh, this big person, died, and he was pretty much just died suddenly and was pretty much killed like in an ambush. So it was like I started hearing, then I started hearing more of like people being put in prison, like some of my family friends who were Tutsis, just like my family, they were being put in prison. At the time, I was so young, and I really didn't understand why they were put in prison.
But up to this point, Tutsis and Hutus were living together in harmony. Maybe not harmony, but everything was fine. You guys didn't have any issues with each other, right?
Yes, everything was fine. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then I mean, we had most of my neighbors were Hutus, and we were just living fine. We played together, and we'll go to their house. They come to our house. Not everything was so normal. It's just during that time, during the 1993, is when I started hearing like, oh, so and so was put in a prison because he was a Tutsi and that kind of stuff. So that's when I started thinking, oh, maybe there's something going on. And I talk about all these things in the book too. And I also started noticing that in the classroom they started not separating us, but they started doing a head count of like who was Hutu and who was Tutsi, and that was during that time, like 1993, like early or late 1992. So that's when I started now. Like I guess I was a child, but I was also starting to, to notice some unusual.
Right, things were changing.
Things were changing. Yes. And so then I also remember like my godfather was also put to prison, and that was really hit me really hard. And I started really kind of like being worried, but because I was obviously I was close to him in terms of like I would go to his house during the vacation, and one time I wasn't able to go because he wasn't there at the time. He was in prison, and my father, I think he just didn't want me to go there and not find him and start asking where is he.
Right. Yeah. So now things are getting closer to home.
Things
without giving too much, because I want people to go buy your book and read your story. But the day that you had to, because I understand you had to leave your home at 12 years old once the genocide started. Can you walk us through that a little bit, just without giving too much information? Because I do want people to go out and buy your book and hear all the details.
From the time that the genocide started,
right? So now you're noticing things are changing. It's getting closer to home. When did the genocide officially start, and when did you realize, oh my gosh, this is no longer stories that I'm hearing, this is reality?
Right. So it was on the night of April. The night of April 6th. So, but that's when actually the everything was triggered that night. when the president then airplane was shut down, and the next morning we found out the next morning, and it was a big deal, obviously, and that's when everything was triggered. But really, the genocide we didn't. But at the time, we didn't know like how much impact this is going to be.
Right.
You know, but from day one, things started changing. I mean, we'll go to the radio and you don't hear the normal, the radio news, and then you won't hear anything. All I heard was just like classical music on the radio. There, nothing, everything had just stopped completely, and so and and that's when we knew, well, things are now normal, and we didn't go to school. My father said, well, actually that time, no, that time we were on vacation actually.
Okay.
So yeah, we didn't have to go to school. But I remember that I was supposed to go visit my uncle with my cousin who was home at the time.
Mm-hmm.
We were supposed to leave that morning. So my father said, let's not go anywhere because we don't know what's going on outside. So and just and I remember that obviously because I was so excited about going to visit my cousin vacation. It was my first time going there, so it was a very, very nice treat for me. And so it didn't happen. I was disappointed, but at the same time, I pretty much kind of followed my parents' order not to go anywhere. Anyways, so that's when the time, the bad times started happening, but it didn't hit our home right away. So it didn't start like nobody came after us right away. But we I don't want to give away the story, but I mean it's just something that we started having to not stay at home and finding other places to go, stay, especially at night, because that's when we felt like, okay, now they know we are sleeping, they can just come, get in the house, and during the day we'll just go back home, because during the day, you are alert, if something happens, somebody comes up, you just start running, for example. So we for a good week, we were still kind of hanging around our home. At night we'll go sleep in other places, so it was about a week after that somebody came to alert us that somebody was going to or a group of killers were coming to our house to kill us. So that's when we had to go. We had to separate ourselves, and everybody ran their own. Some of us went in groups. So pretty much that's when I noticed, okay, our life is in danger, literally. When somebody came and say, they're coming to your house. So from that time is when my really genocide journey happened. Started happening, hiding in different places, in which the entire details is gonna be in the book, and I explain the different places I went to, how long I spent there, the things I encountered during my journey, because I had to live from place to places for all the 3 months. I wasn't in the same place, or the 3 months during the genocide. So I explain exactly what happened during that time frame.
So at that point, you guys split up after the person knocks at your door, giving you a heads up that they're coming for you. Everybody goes their separate ways, not knowing that you'll ever see each other again, right?
No. We didn't even have like a chance to like say goodbye to each other. it happened so suddenly.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like you're sitting here, you know, and somebody comes and say, "Oh, somebody's coming to kill you." There's no time to to think and to plan on what you're going to do, except my parents say, "Oh, we need to start running. Grab your jacket, put on your jacket, put on an extra pants, then let's go." Because they didn't even say, okay, and how long they're coming. Are they like next door, or So
Right.
everything had to be sudden, and you had to just leave and find other places to hide,
Right.
besides home.
So you guys
So
all go your separate ways at this point, and we're not gonna get into the details of how you ended up surviving. Grab his
mhm,
book, Angels on My Path. It's available on
yeah,
Amazon.
yes. And what I want to maybe say about that in the book,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, and why I called it an interest on my path is because um, with my everything that I went through during the genocide um, was there was like some near misses where I almost died, but I didn't. Something happened that I feel like something that I can even myself explain. When I reflect back on
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, so why did this happen? Why did I get away? I did something that up to this point I'm not able to explain myself. Besides just knowing that it was as a somebody who believes in God. God has had um, sent his angels to spare me, um, and that's why that name came about, and even the things I went through after the genocide, how I coped with the genocide, how
That's what I
I
wanted
even
to get to.
yeah
So
yes
with the three after those 3 months that seemed
mhm,
to last eternity, 1.1 million Tutsis died during that time, and you
yes
lost a lot of family members as well.
yes
So you once the genocide ended, right? 3 months
yes
after,
hmm
did you go back to your home to kind of figure out who survived, who didn't? Can you just give us a little bit without sharing too much on what happened after the genocide
hmm
ended?
So after the genocide, I ended up at some point I ended up with my one of my aunts.
Okay.
And that's pretty much the genocide ended when I was my aunt. So at the time, my aunt lived, I want to say maybe 30-minute walk to my original home.
Mm-hmm.
Um, at the time, yes, I was curious to know like what happened because I didn't know some of but during the genocide, so I came to learn that some of my family members didn't survive. Um,
Okay.
but I didn't know like where they did die.
What
And
happened?
what
Mm-hmm.
happened.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and at the time too, some of my family members, I had no idea whether they survived or not. So it was going to be like a search, and then figuring out, okay, I know, so and so didn't survive, but what about so and so?
Right.
Yeah. So um, uh, after about a week or 2 weeks, that's when I started knowing some of my family members, my siblings. Some of them actually did survive, and they actually they turn up. So they pretty much. I all of a sudden I heard, oh, so and so is at your other aunt somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So then we did link up after
Okay.
after like a week or so.
Right.
But then like some other ones, some of my other siblings, we didn't link up until like a month or so. So during that time though, so I was my other aunt on my dad's side, my dad's sister heard that we survived. Some of my dad's kids survived. So then she said, well, she contacted my other aunt that time, and she said that I want to have those kids here in my house. I want to provide for those kids. Um, so then that's when they talked and everything. Then and we ended up moving with my aunt because even then we were still
You were still
searching for some of
kids, right?
we're still kids and we're still like searching for
Your other siblings.
in my other siblings and so we and really like even like my mother or my father, we didn't know for sure they died, but immediately what my aunt did, like I know these kids are here, so I'm gonna take them, then I'm gonna help them find whoever in the family survived. So that's why it took just a little bit longer to know exactly who died and who didn't die. But in the book, I do kind of lay it out well on how everything like took place and when I know who died and who didn't die and all that kind of stuff. That's all in the book. Like you said, I don't want to give too much away.
Right.
But it's so during that time is when I had turned 13 in July of 1994.
20.
So that's when I knew everything. My life has changed forever. Just knowing how the people I did to have around, they're not there anymore. Then it was just now a matter of like readjusting
Right.
with life.
So you come from having a normal life as a 12-year-old, having both parents, having your siblings, everything was normal, and overnight literally your life is flipped upside down. How does a 13-year-old pick up the pieces at that point and keep going? How did you find this strength to say, you know what, this happened, but I'm not going to let it define me? I'm going to overcome it. What was it that kept you going during that time?
A lot of it really had to do with myself taking all that negativity like outside my mind, not think too much of it. It was so painful, and I would even at times I went back to my old home. And I found it the way I found it. Which the readers will find out about that information. But the way I found my neighborhood, the way I found my own home, was so gave me so much anger about everything that had happened. And but then I was like, okay, what do I do about this? I had what did help me was having also like family members that survived with me, that I knew I wasn't alone. So they were kind of really like, we were kind of distracting each other from all the bad things. And I avoided going back to my hometown because it was bringing me back bad memories. But I also just told myself, well, I have to find a way to live my life and move on. I know I can't physically do anything about it, or do anything about who, those that, hurt me, hurt my family.
Mhm.
The only thing I can do, good thing I can do for myself is try to move forward and go back to school, grow up and finish school and get a good job and live a good life and try to stay away from thinking all these uh, bad memories. But it was so hard. It was so hard because I had dreams and nightmares of what was happening during the genocide. That it was so hard to get away from it. But so it is huge. I just had to find a way to distract myself. Getting involved in sports. You know, just making friends and just really just try to do something new, something fun, so that I'm not always having those nightmares. Because most of the time you're gonna have dreams about the things you did during your normal life. So going back to my home was
Mhm.
something that I knew that it's gonna keep bringing my memory. So I avoided going back there. I only went back there for whatever when it was needed. um, whether it's just looking after our land, and or finding somebody who who's gonna take care of our land, and all that other like property stuff that we had to take care of. So but I avoided to go there to visit home as much as I could. But it was so hard. Even now, so now, so I'm entering my teenage years, where
Mhm.
you have all everything, you're being distracted. Uh, uh, then I moved to the US, and that was also the best thing also that happened for me. Was able to knowing that, I'm going to seek a better life here uh, in the US. So I didn't move. I moved in the US about 4 years after the genocide. So
So
that also did.
it was still pretty fresh for you at
It
the
was
time.
pretty. Yeah, it was still pretty fresh at the time. Um,
Once you
but
got here, was therapy ever an option for you? Did anybody ever say, "Hey, what are you interested in getting therapy?" I mean, I understand it's an African community and
mhm,
that we don't really believe in. I mean, I shouldn't say we, but therapy hasn't been the most common thing in our
come and
communities.
think. Right,
Right.
right, right.
But did
Uh-huh.
anybody ever say, you've been through a lot? Did you ever
So
consider therapy at all?
right. No, I never considered therapy, or like even my older sister Polly, who that was here, was probably the first thing that she should have said. We need to
Mm-hmm.
get you, because she was already here.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, well, she probably would have said, oh, we, let's get you checked and everything. But I think also my sister didn't believe in that. She believed in the best therapy also you can have is having a family around. So that's what she did. Do Try to do the best she could to help me leave the country and come here.
Mm-hmm.
That was like her form of therapy for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, um, and, um, and I talk a lot about that too, like in the book, on like how she did what she could, and at times it was not it was impossible even to get all of us here. Even some of my other siblings was tough to get them here. But uh, thank God that I didn't have any physical wounds or mental wounds. Uh, that that really made me go like insane. But I think God did really help me in the sense of that I was able to tune out those negative things, which I know a lot of people were not able to. So I thank God for that, because I could have just went a completely different route, and just starting rebelling, not listening to my aunt, um, there's a lot of things that I could have um, done, but I didn't. So for me, mentally, I was okay. I was stable in the sense that really my sister didn't realize or see that it need for therapy. Um, but she probably could have at least got me checked, but she really didn't have to. So now that's something I thank God for.
And I think you write in this book, that's the best form of therapy there is, just putting all your
Hmm.
thoughts on paper. And maybe
Um,
it took you this long because maybe mentally you weren't ready and you blamed it on laziness and all these other things. But you mentioned the reason why you named it Angels on My Path is because of the angels you kept running into during your 3 months, the 3 months of the genocide. But God is still sending you angels to this day with the guy, that helped you with the
yes,
gas. He was.
yes, 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 yes. And honestly, even in my normal everyday life, I
Mm-hmm.
see that. I see it, and really that's why. And there were so many choices, I know, to name this book, but I stuck with that because that resonated the most with my life, and I couldn't find any better title than having that title, and I know it's just for the rest of my life. I'm going to have angels in my path for as long as I believe in.
So let's talk about forgiveness.
Yes.
Watching the people you grew up with, people you considered family, your neighbors, just turn into these monsters and killing people you loved and all of that. How was that? Once the genocide ended, how were you able to forgive? If you have forgiven, that is. But I'm pretty sure you have because you're a very positive person. And the Kaka that I know is always very happy-go-lucky. And people who don't know you will not believe that you've been through the things that you've been through because you're just always so happy and positive.
Hmm.
But how were you able to forgive? How did you get to that place?
Um. So Judy, I think, and I talk about that in the book too.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think there's different forms of forgiveness.
Mm.
They There's a way to forgive because you want to forget. So in a sense that um, you know you can give someone in your own heart, uh, but also forgiveness. I believe it takes more than it takes both parties. Forgiveness does not just take one person. So I cannot, for me to go to say, for me to move on, I have to forgive the person that killed my one of my families or my family member. Um, so to me, that's kind of lying to myself because how do you forgive someone who's not even remorseful of what they did to you? So for me, it's always been an issue of like always using the word forgiveness in that sense because I don't want to generalize that word forgiveness, or I don't want to people think that okay, you've um, come this long way, and yeah, it seems like you have forgiven those who have done wrong to you. Um, I would say that I had to find a way to forget all the negativity, all the bad things that people did, um, so that I can move on and not have a constant anger in me.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happens when you have constant anger that distracts you from doing the good things that you need to do to move on your life? You're always thinking about the bad things you can do to that person, and at times you take it on other people in your life that are in your life. They could be your family members, or they could be other people you meet on the street, or like your acquaintances.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure even in naturally, when you're mad about something, sometimes if you can't control it, you end up, treating your friend badly, or saying something wrong to your friend. and where they'll say, "Oh, what's wrong? What happened? What's wrong?"
Mm-hmm.
So those are the things that I told myself. I have to forget uh, these the things that the killers did to my family, um, in order for me to think positively. Uh, but for me, I will not say that I truly forgiven them, because I have not encountered them, and I know, and based on the story that I hear, and based on uh, some of those that killed my family, that are actually now back in my hometown,
Mm-hmm.
whether they have served their terms for what they did, and whether they didn't even go to prison, because some of these people didn't have anybody to witness, or who was a witness of what they did, so they weren't convicted. So, but those people, for as long as they're not remorseful for what they've done, it's really hard to forgive that person. You can forget what they did wrong to you, and knowing myself, uh, the way I say that I have forgiven them is that because I cannot go and hurt them or revenge. So that's, for me, it is saying, I forgive you for what you did to my parents, uh, in the sense that I cannot revenge, because I don't believe in the revenge.
Mm-hmm.
But until somebody comes say, I've done you wrong, I have hurt you, um, you know, and this has to be like, really, honestly, forgiveness is like on an individual basis. So I think really um, uh, uh, whenever, a lot of times we say, "Oh, I have forgiven," it's really, sometimes it's like lying to ourselves. And I'm just stopping. I'm speaking for myself,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I want to be clear that, deep down in my heart, I have, moved on. I have found ways to move on. Everybody is different. You know, everybody has different ways to deal with, while with the effects of the genocide, what they did them what they did to them. I have friends that don't think the same way I think. Um, you know, so it is, it is on a day, on a personal basis. And forgiveness, normally, really, it takes like the two people. Somebody will come and say, I'm sorry, I've done you wrong, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. Then you feel that somebody is really remorseful, and it gives you the courage to forgive them. But if someone is still just out there saying, "Oh, the genocide didn't happen," or it was the double genocide, which is also why I really was motivated to write my story, so that I tell people that the genocide happened. This is what happened to my family. This is
Mm-hmm.
what happened to my family, friends, families. How can you say that the genocide didn't happen? And we see that in a lot of American communities, where you have some other people that um, would say, "Oh, nah, the genocide didn't happen, or it was a double genocide for whatever reason." And when people don't know the truth, they will believe all those things. But for me, I was motivated. Also, it was another reason why I really was motivated to write this book, is to make sure that the truth, you know, um, is seen. It's seen, so that, and also encouraging other survivors to do the same thing. I know it's not easy. Um, it's not easy. It wasn't easy for me, but I also see that it can be done. It can be done uh, when you understand the fruits of your work and the impact it's going to have for the future generations. And so for me, that's why I always have to be clear that well, I have my own form of forgiveness inside of me, but I wouldn't say that I have completely forgiven those who done me wrong, because until I encounter them, until they come out, they don't have to find me where I am. But if, I haven't seen many cases, especially from people from my hometown, that okay, they somebody has said they've done wrong and they're remorseful. I give an example in the book too about one individual who denied killing, but they did. But one of my family members saw him in the act. So and again, like that was back in maybe 10 years after the genocide.
Mm-hmm.
The person is sitting there, not admitting what they did was wrong, and denying that they did that. So that is what really shows you that so how do you forgive somebody who doesn't even accept that they did something wrong? I mean, how could you say how can you say I have forgiven? You can say I have forgiven you because I cannot go and hurt you back,
Mm-hmm.
And find somebody to I may not be able to do something wrong, but maybe pay somebody else to do that, but either way is doing wrong, doing something wrong, and revenge, which I don't believe in. But I think that it's in itself, it's forgiving someone because you're not doing a revenge. But I'm clear to make sure that people don't think just because I found ways to do other things for my own life, to improve my own life. I didn't become like a madman and going out and saying bad things to people. That does not mean that I truly forgiven those who did me wrong. So a lot of times I think it's good to be specific on these issues of like forgiveness, and even like if when you somebody asks you about forgiveness, so be specific and say forgive who? Forgive the killers, or forgive or to my who did wrong, or you're talking about forgiving in general? I'm not a mad person. I'm not going out there saying all the bad things, or I'm not hurting. I'm not going out trying to revenge. So always it's good to be specific on really and clear what you mean when you say that you have forgiven.
So basically,
someone.
you've chosen not to be angry. You've chosen not to let anger take over your life, and you've chosen to focus on the positive things in your life, but you feel like you can't fully say you've forgiven until those people have asked for forgiveness.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad that you actually wrote this book. And like you said, if more people out there tell their own stories and tell their own truth, then we'll have less and less of the genocide deniers. Because, when people choose to be silent, the ones that are denying and saying these things didn't happen, their voices get louder and louder. So thank you so much for being brave enough to not only have to relive everything you went through, but putting it on paper. I'm sure that was, you were revisiting all the trauma, all over again. So Kaka, thank you so much. That was very brave of you. Angels on My Path. It is available on Amazon. Order this book. It's amazing. And you don't have to be Rwandese to enjoy it. This is a story that every human being should hear. And there's so much to learn from. So thank you. Come back anytime. I'm sure you're going to be writing more books now that you're an author.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a possibility.
Maybe your next book will be about forgiveness and all the levels there
Sure.
is to it. You never
Yes.
know.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's possible. I want to thank you for having me on, and this is truly an amazing opportunity to come and talk with you. And yes, please um, uh, go get the angels on my path. And I think it's a story that um, uh, that anyone really can benefit from. And I say this also from with my friends that I talk to, and the people that I who they know I wrote the book. Um, it's the way genocide happened and it changed our lives. But there's other forms of violence that happen to people every single day, everywhere in the world. Um, so I just want to let people know that they're not alone. If something happens to you, you're not alone. There are other people that have gone through um, um, a lot of different types of violences. It is just how do you deal with those disappointments, um, and the fact that you're not alone also shows that people can move forward together, and that's why I also encourage my fellow genocide survivors to be courageous and start writing their stories. Even if it doesn't have to be in the form of a book, it can just be put on paper, and they can share with their children, with their friends, because we don't want to our kids to grow up not exactly knowing what happened to their parents and their families. And the more generations will come where if my kids cannot explain to my grandchildren what happened to his family or to their families, then who else is going to? But it has
Right.
to start with us. We have to relay that information, that true story, uh, to the world, so that it can be preserved, uh, for future generations. Um, and the best and accurate stories will come from us. They will not come from our children who will try to write books about their parents when they don't have the full knowledge of what has happened. And that is
Exactly.
why, yeah, and that is why I really encourage um, not just genocide survivors, anybody who has a compelling story and that they would like to share with the world, to not be afraid to share, because this can truly change generations and generations of life, if we educate the world on these issues. And so
Definitely.
thank you so much, Judy, for having me on the show.
Oh, thank you for coming. And for all the listeners out there, thanks for tuning in. Until next time. You've been listening to IPU Podcast. You can follow IPU Podcast on Instagram. If you haven't yet, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join us next week for another inspiring story. Follow your passion, it will lead you to your purpose. As always, thanks for listening. Until next time.